Welcome back to another episode of the Edible Valley Podcast. I'm chef and host Jonathan Fraser, and today we're going to learn a little bit about cheese. Thank you so much for being patient with us. As you can see, I'm all by myself today because poor William, he is a busy man. He is kept very busy with 2 kids now and keeping up on real estate. And myself, I've mixed things up a little bit. I am now located in Port Alberni. Okay, not full time. I'm still with Aaron on the weekends. But for now, I've taken on a professional cook level 2 in Port Alberni at North Island College, or as here we call it, the Rogers Street Bistro. So that's right. I've got a group of level 2 students that I'm training up and giving them as much knowledge as I possibly can and giving them a chance to get some hands-on experience cooking a lot of different foods. But you're asking yourself, well, how does that affect the Edible Valley? So part of this, I've been doing a little bit of video work, and I was able to sit down and do a little video show with Doug Smith from Natural Pastures Cheese and Anissa Jane, who is their general manager. I got the 2 of them and I did some wonderful videos. So they're going to be going up on Natural Pastures Cheese. So if you want to go check out the website or check out their YouTube site, there's these great videos. But while that was all going on, I took the audio from Doug's introduction of the cheese factory, and he went on for quite a while and is some amazing and wonderful information. And we had a lovely group with us that asked a whole bunch of questions about the cheese. And I just thought this would be a great opportunity for, people out there to learn a little bit about Natural Pastures Cheese and how they got together and how it all started and Doug's sort of philosophy on cheese making. But I just want to do one little plug for the North Vancouver Island Culinary Association. So that's right. I don't know if you've heard, but out there we are doing a freezer raffle draw. North Vancouver Island Culinary Association has a 20 cubic foot frigid air stand-up freezer that was donated to us by Parker's Appliance and More. Thank you so much for that, and big plug out to them. And of course, we've got a whole bunch of containers donated to us from Enterprise Papers, and we're going to take all those containers and we're going to fill them up with food created by our chefs. So there's a whole bunch of different creations going in there, and all of our members are super excited to share some of their favorite recipes with you. And so all these meals are going to be done up, frozen in the containers, and they'll be ready for you to pull out when you're ready to get it. So tickets are $5, and you can find them at lots of places, especially as I was saying, Natural Pastures Cheese has some there, as well as North Island College in Campbell River at the Bistro. Just to get you tempted with some of the food from the lovely treats that come out with there's lots of curries, some stews. We're definitely looking at a whole bunch of gelatos, some fresh made soups. Well, I guess they'll be frozen now, but we've got all these lovely treats and more in this freezer for you to experience the whole love of the North Vancouver Island and the chefs that have created their dishes for you. So yes, I recommend getting out and winning them. I wish I could, but I'm a member and I'm going to be helping fill up that freezer. So if you're out there, you can also connect with any member of the North Vancouver Island Chefs Association. We're all carrying tickets and all being very, very excited to get rid of them as soon as possible because there's only 4,000 tickets out there. So with that being said, now let's get on to the show. Let me share you a little bit of the fun I got to experience and the knowledge I learned from Doug Smith at Natural Pastures Cheese. Welcome to the Edible Valley Podcast.
We want to invite you as we embark on a culinary journey through the heart of Vancouver Island.
From the fertile fields
to the pristine waters of the Pacific Ocean,
we'll explore the stories behind the food that nourishes us.
Tune in to each episode as we deep dive into the flavors, the traditions, and the innovations that make this a true paradise.
Now please join us as we explore our Edible Valley.
Welcome everybody, my name's Doug. My brothers and I are the owners of Natural Pastures. And Anissa, who's working here, she has customers in the store. We're normally closed on Saturdays, but people show up to buy cheese. So she'll be along shortly. So I'd like to welcome you here. It's a business that has been a bit of a long journey for our family. We are, come on in. We're third generation farming family here in the Comox Valley. My grandfather originally homesteaded in North Battleford and moved to the Comox Valley when my dad was about 6 or 7 years old. We have some deepish roots here in the valley. We were a dairy farming family for most of my working career, and part of coming out of that, we started this business as a way of diversifying. We were concerned back in the late 1990s about viability of processing milk on the island. For those of you that might have been around or knew some of the dairy farmers up in this area, we were shipping to Dairyland, which was a co-op at the time, and they got into financial trouble, and we were concerned about it. An opportunity came, and we decided we'd get into the milk processing business, and we knew nothing about it, absolutely nothing. We learned a lot over 25 years. So we rented this building and renovated it for production, and we'll have a tour around later so you can see what goes on in the back. It's actually much bigger than most people think, so there's a lot that goes on. And we made our first cheese in 2001, so we've been at this for a while. And I originally wasn't involved as much with the cheese plant. It was my oldest brother, Edgar. I was still running the milk herd and farming, and that's where I thought I would stay. But as we got older, and we thought, well, I'm getting tired for farming, so we've transitioned out of farming and into milk processing. And probably our story's not terribly different from a lot of farming families on the island, probably within the province. I have a feeling we're probably going to be the last generation out of our family that farms or is in the food business. Maybe things will change, but so far all of our kids, they've all moved off and on doing other things. But that's okay. They've got their goals and visions in their life just as we did with ours, and I don't regret being a farmer. It's been a good life for me. But having said that, and hearing some of the discussions, there's some trying times coming up ahead, whether it be international trade agreements or breaking of trade agreements and competition. All those things are kinds of things that we're facing, and you as agrologists, I think you probably have to deal with them too if you're involved in the agricultural business or you're advising people in agriculture. So I'll give a little bit of background about what we actually do here. And when we go through the tour and you see some of the equipment and what we do, part of it, our success, is having good quality milk that we can access from here, mostly from Comox Valley, some of it from Port Alberni as well. We do both cow milk cheese and water buffalo milk cheese. So water buffalo is something that's relatively new in Canada. The Archers who were farming down in Duncan imported the water buffalo from Europe. Probably the late 1990s, I think it was, early 2000s, and had a horrendous battle with CFIA. But they persevered, and they managed to start a small herd of water buffalo, and we started making cheese with their milk in 2007. And we now get the majority of our buffalo milk from a farm here in Courtenay, in McClintocks. And we've expanded our types of cheese that we make, and I think that's one of the things that for us helps to make us successful, is we have a very capable cheesemaker. Our head cheesemaker and production manager is Paul Sutter. He's originally from Switzerland. He was trained there as a cheesemaker, and he has the capability of making a large variety of cheeses, and he had a lot of experience with goat milk and sheep milk as well as cow milk. So for him to transition into water buffalo, it was challenging, but he was had the capability of being able to make cheese from it. And some of the samples you'll try today, you'll be able to try some different water buffalo cheese. And so at the moment, we probably make about 25 different kinds of cheese. And most of them, unless you live in the local area and you come buy from our little store, you may never see them because we sometimes make very small batches that we just sell to ourselves or maybe local restaurant or local business that buys directly from us. And we probably have about 10 to 15 cheeses that are widely distributed. So I think you guys represent up and down the island, and it depends on the retailers what you're actually going to see in the marketplace. You may only see our soft cheese, a brie or camembert, or some stores they might carry 7, 8, 9 different kinds of cheese. That is one thing that is difficult for us as a producer, is trying to encourage retailers, carry more local cheese, carry more Canadian or specialty cheese. And it's difficult because they look at it as how much money can I make per square inch of cooler space. And sometimes they don't want to carry things that are a little more specialized. So that's a little bit about what we do. And I was thinking, what are some of the things that make us successful? And I think the word terroir comes up. I don't think it's something that's often associated with cheese. It's more in the wine industry that use that term. But it really does apply here. The cows where we get our milk from here on Vancouver Island, they have a unique climate and landform and geography that is very different from, say, even the interior of BC or the prairies or Ontario, Quebec. And it does come through in the flavor and texture of the cheese. And I think as a farmer, I look at it as, well, what do the cows eat? Because that's the number one thing I would look at. And generally we grow cool season grasses here probably better than most any other place in Canada, other than maybe you go to the East Coast. This marine climate that we have here is, things like alfalfa tend not to grow very well here just because of the wet winter climate that we experience on a regular basis, but the cool season grasses, and they grow well. What I realized in my career as a dairy farmer was that it's probably some things that we had not really taken advantage of in this area. I transitioned, or my brothers and I, we transitioned from a conventional herd of confined dairying to intensive grazing, and we did that starting in the late 80s, early 90s. And we found that we did actually very well, but there's a few limiting factors that we have in this area, and one is water supply. Because while we get a lot of water, we don't get a lot of water in the growing season. And we happen to have the capability of doing a lot of irrigation. So those are these kinds of things that I was thinking as agrologists, we can see there's some advantages, but there may be some limiting factors. And now we can discuss that more maybe as we go along, but I think that the cost savings that we experienced doing that system of farming, I wouldn't say we were as cheap as New Zealand, but some of the factors that make New Zealand one of the most cost-effective dairying regions in the world, we can apply here. And I think it's worth our while to start looking at those things, because the Americans aren't going to play nice with us when it comes to supply management. We've been in the crosshairs for as long as I've been in the dairy business, and even before, as a child in the 70s, I listened to my dad talking with the other farmers. It was always a concern, and that's not going to go away. And I know you guys were talking about in the forestry business, you're in the crosshairs too. I don't know what kind of things you can do to make it more cost effective to overcome those kinds of things. But in the dairy industry, when you're sitting next to a country that has a surplus that they're trying to dump out of their market just to get rid of it, and we're sitting right next to them, it's very difficult. And we're at the mercy of trade negotiators. But for us as a cheesemaker, the only thing we can do is make a good product that people will buy. I really appreciate that homegrown desire of buy Canadian that's just sprung up across this country in the last month or 2 months. And it's not an organized thing, it's just people going like, I'm sick and tired of this and I support my country. And that is one thing I think we have going for us. I can talk for hours about this kind of stuff, but I know you have probably some questions that you might want to talk about. And I think I've covered some of the things about it. I know when we get into the tour, I might talk a little bit more at that time about some of the actual processes of making cheese. Some of you may be familiar with cheese making, maybe you do it at home, maybe you've never seen it before, but when we go on the tour, ask lots of questions. That's the best way to learn something. So that's a quick overview, and I wanted to leave some time for questions because I'm not really sure what you folks are really keen about or what kind of questions you have. So I'll leave it at that and open the floor to some questions. Yeah.
What are the cool seasons of the milk?
So the question was, what cool seasons grasses do we have and how does that affect the flavor? I would say orchard grass, ryegrass, tall fescues, clovers. Because we started with conventional farm, we planted our fields. What we found as we got into the intensive grazing, that the mix of plants changed dramatically. We probably had way more clovers in our fields than we ever had when we were cutting with machinery. But to give you an idea, like most people, they cut every 30 days for silage or hay. In the height of the growing season, if I didn't get my cows back on that grass in 2 weeks, it was too tall. We would make rotations of between 10 and 15 times through the whole growing season. And we would maybe be starting on a good year, we're almost getting cows out grazing now. It's all depending on how dry it is, how warm it is, the grass growing. But once you hit about late April, early May, the grass just takes off and it's hard to keep up with it. How it affects the milk, I'm not a chemist or whatever, and I can't say, well, it's these kind of compounds. All I know is alfalfa creates a different taste in the milk than, say, ryegrass or orchard grass. And we have done very well in cheese competitions, especially with our soft cheese. And yes, we've got good cheesemakers, but we're going up against good cheesemakers around the world. We generally go to the World Cheese Championships, which is every 2 years in Madison, Wisconsin. And so there could be European cheesemakers, American, Canadian, Australian, Japanese. But in 2008, we won with our Brie in the soft cheese category. With our Camembert, we've placed third several times. And generally we're in the kind of top 5 to 8 just about every competition. So to me, there's that it's that synergy of a good cheesemaker with good milk. And I think that the terroir maybe comes through more in soft cheese than maybe a firm cheese. But it is something that I don't have any scientific data that says, yes, this is what does it. It's more of like, well, the results speak for themselves. Anyone else?
One more question.
Sure.
How are you, the intensive grazing, are you using like temporary fencing?
We did. We're out of the dairy business now. We're retired dairy farmers but at the time, our milk herd was about 320 cows, and we had all of our young stock, our dry animals, and we also had a beef herd. So we had about 700 to 750 animals total. And what we did is we set up our paddocks a size for the groups of milk cows that could go in, get enough grazing between each milking. And then we adjusted it because we used guns for irrigation. So the width that a gun would spray in its arc, that would determine the width of the paddock. Then the amount that we needed determined the length. And it was roughly about a hectare per paddock. We would go through between 7 to 10 paddocks a day. So I spent about half of my day on an ATV riding around, which suited me just fine. But some of the benefits are, for one, you're not running machinery. And we could see that right off the bat, where we probably cut down our fuel bill by 25–30%, just right off the bat. The other thing is our feed quality of forage increased, so we could cut back on our grain bill. And the difference between our summer grain bill and our winter grain bill was probably a factor of 4. So we were using about a quarter of the grain in the growing season as we were in the winter time. Our vet noticed like just how physically strong the cows were, because they were walking 8 to 10 kilometers a day. Our farthest paddock from the barn was probably about 1.5 kilometers. I mean, there were shorter ones where they're going like 300 meters, but 1.5 kilometers for a Holstein cow, that's a fair walk. Plus she's walking around while she's on the field. And just the healthy animal from the exercise, being out in the sunshine. They're like humans. Sit around on the couch and do nothing, we get lazy. Cows are the same. And it was interesting when the weather got nice about this time of year, like if we had a nice warm sunny day, they'd be all at the end of the barn waiting to go out. They go like, yeah, it's time to go out. And then in October, November, and you get one of those big monsoon rains, you couldn't blow them out of the barn with dynamite, because they're just like, no, I'm not going out today, no. They're not stupid animals, they do know what's going on. But it was, the thing that I liked about it personally, was that it was a fun way to manage animals. Because you had to think, because you've got all these variables going on. It wasn't just driving a tractor around, dumping feed in front of them, and you had to figure out, sometimes weeks ahead of time, your rotation schedules and feed and all that kind of stuff. I just found it interesting. But I don't know of many farms that have taken it on. I know when we started Shannon's dairy in Port Alberni, they started grazing their cows at about the same time. They're still going on. And there may be a few other farms. I'm out of the loop of what's going on in the day-to-day on-farm thing. But it was just night and day, such a difference between going from one system and the other. And it wasn't easy, but it was a real challenge. And all my two brothers and I, we really took up that challenge and tried to make it work, because my brother had traveled through New Zealand, and he was the first one to really think, yeah, maybe we need to change the way we do things. I traveled, after we got started, I went to Australia and New Zealand and had a look at it, and I go, yeah, the way these guys, I mean, they have their issues, especially in New Zealand, some of the pollution issues they have from, I think, over-fertilizing. But those are management issues that can be figured out. The concept of a cow eating grass on a field, that's, God designed them to do that. It's like they take to it right away. A cow gets out, and the first thing they do is, oh, there's grass here to eat, and they go eat it. And they may never have seen green grass before in their life, but they know what it is. So, anybody else? Yes.
When you changed systems and the cows became stronger and fitter, did you notice the quality of the milk improved as well?
One thing we did notice, and this is going back, so I'm just going by memory, is we certainly saw a much higher fat test on our milk. So the components, and at that time, the way the pricing was in the quota system, is that was actually a detriment. Whereas right now, having high fat tests is a positive in the way the pricing is. But that was probably the most noticeable difference. When we first started, we were using milk from our farm. We could see the difference in the color of the cheese. So that's one thing with, especially with cow's milk, is the carotene, the beta carotenes in that do create a more yellowy color, and it was very noticeable. With the water buffalo milk, it doesn't matter what they eat, it's an ivory white color. And the McClintocks, who is our main supplier of water buffalo milk, they do graze their animals, and we notice the fluctuations in the milk components, but we don't see a difference in the color. So whether, if it turns really hot and it affects the grass quality and the pasture, we see a change in the milk components very quickly. But for us, when we had our farm, I think the advantage of having the irrigation mitigated some of those effects. But I would say, the one advantage New Zealand has over us is they don't need buildings. The advantage that we had over New Zealand is our productivity in the springtime, because of the difference in day length. We could actually, if we were on our game, I think we could produce more forage per year, because they're depending on a certain amount of forage in the wintertime, whereas we're off the fields. So we're concentrating our forage production more in the growing season. Anything else? Yeah.
What other kind of advantages or strengths of the New Zealand system do you see could be used here?
Okay, the question is, what other advantages of the New Zealand system versus here?
Oh, that could be employed here.
Oh, that
or
could
not.
be employed here? I think the one thing I noticed, and I mean, I was there quite a long time ago, was the system they had for transferring farm ownership from generation to generation. Because they don't necessarily depend on kids to take it on. It's great if they do, but they have a system where they can transfer farms to somebody that really wants to farm but has no capital. You know, that is a downside of agriculture in this country, is that it's so horrendously expensive to get into it in a commercial way. You'll see a lot of people that maybe they have a small market garden or they have a small beef operation, but I would say 90% of the time they're working off farm and they subsidize the farm, or it's a part-time thing. To have somebody that's like, they're solely dependent on what they grow to survive and thrive and be profitable, it's difficult. And in New Zealand, they would, like, say I'm an older established farmer and I've got a herd and whatever, and I'm tired. I don't want to be milking cows anymore. So there's some young person comes along and says, okay, I'm going to milk your cows for a share of the profits. And they make the agreement. Maybe part of it is they get some of the young animals. So they're working to build equity so that they can have a stake, and maybe eventually they're good. And I think we depend on that resilience of having our own food supply. Because if we didn't have a food supply in Canada, do you want to depend on Donald Trump to be nice to us? I don't. Yeah, we may be able to trade with Australia or New Zealand, but you got to have any of these kind of trade negotiations, you have to have some strength in your position. Otherwise, you're just taking the terms of what people will allow you. And I think the egg situation in the US is a prime example. They get so concentrated that when problems happen, it's detrimental. And my concern is with the dairy industry, we're going in that same direction. Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but I wouldn't be surprised if 80% of the milk production is in the Fraser Valley. I may be wrong. I see that as a real weakness. And why has that happened? It wasn't always that way. Well, as farms in this area, farmers retire, the production always seems to go to the Fraser Valley. And I'd like to see areas like this that have, we have some advantages to be dairy farming in the Comox Valley or the Cowichan Valley or the Alberni Valley. And one is land cost, and another is our ability to have large, extensive grazing areas. But on the other hand, the farmers need to be willing to do it. Not everybody thought that what we were doing was a smart thing. In fact, many didn't, but hey, we thought we had found a way to be successful, and we went for it. So.